President Cyril Ramaphosa has challenged members of the Pan-African Parliament, the PAP, not to shy away from discussing migration. Addressing the opening of the Parliament's 7th legislature, the president focused on responding to some of the burning issues on the continent. For more on this, we're joined now in studio by SABC News specialist correspondent Sophie Mokoena. Good evening, and thank you for your time, our Sophie. So, recap then. This is an issue that has become something of a point of conflict, if not dispute, between South Africa and a few countries on the African continent, as characterized by some of what Ghana is calling for at the AU level. The PAP being one of the institutions of the AU. What did the president have to say about its role in this unfolding debate?
I think to start with, the president normally on Mondays, he is supposed to be at Luthuli House, as you know, that doing the party work, as it is a trend that follows other leaders who were there before him, like former President Mandela, President Mbeki, President Zuma, and also now him. Every Monday he is supposed to be at Luthuli House dealing with ANC matters, but he decided to go to the Pan-African Parliament, to go and engage the African Parliament on challenges facing the continent. And clearly the issue of migration did come up. I think the president saw this as an opportunity to engage with lawmakers from different parts of the continent, because you know that the Pan-African Parliament is constituted of members of different areas of the continent, and those who are legislatures and also who are in parliament. And therefore, you have a platform to speak to the lawmakers, the politicians who will carry the message. And he did just that. First, by clarifying action taken by South Africa to those who are breaking the law, who are foreign nationals, but also South Africans who are breaking the law against foreign nationals. And he went further also to indicate that South Africa will not shy away from implementing its immigration laws, but also was very firm that as the country is doing that, it will not violate the international law. And I think the message was well received because he was quite frank, and he was very, very firm, but also went further to say to those who are questioning South Africa's commitment to the continent that it cannot be starting from Nelson Mandela, even making an example that in 2002, when the AU was launched, South Africa is a founding member of the AU, but also South Africa is the first chair of the AU, and at that time it was former South African President Thabo Mbeki when it was launched in Durban. And since then, South Africa participated in also the formulation of NEPAD, that blueprint for development of Africa, and the African peer review mechanism, not looking at other involvements such as peacekeeping and helping when there are crises on the continent.
It is the 7th legislature of the Pan-African Parliament since its founding, Sophie, and it can at times, can the PAP be robust, especially on issues of contention between the different regions of the continent. It's early stages because, as you say, President Ramaphosa was addressing the opening of the 7th legislature. But was it possible to get a sense of the prominence and perhaps the passion that some members carry on this theme of migration?
I think the leadership, the Bureau, you can see that they mean business. The president of the Pan-African Parliament coming from Algeria, and a man who understands the politics of the continent, particularly as it relates to the Liberation Organization, what the forebears envisaged in terms of liberating the continent. You also have the other vice president who is also from Ghana, and a woman who is very, very forthright and very frank on issues affecting the continent and also women in particular. And coming from Ghana, a country that was liberated early days, and secondly, the country that was led by Kwame Nkrumah, who spoke about the unity of Africa. And therefore, you can understand the passion based on the background of the leadership of the Bureau. And lastly, generally, members of the Pan-African Parliament that I have engaged with from Malawi, whether you talk about those from other countries, they are ready to discuss the challenges facing the continent. And therefore, it will be up to the AU to support them. As the president indicated, there's no reason for leaders on the continent to be skeptic about the Pan-African Parliament, because the problem here, Pan-African Parliament, you also have members of the opposition. And therefore, some leaders on the continent in different countries who don't like democracy, they don't want to support the Pan-African Parliament. It is for that reason the president said they have to support the democracy on the continent and all institutions that are supporting democracy on the continent, and therefore allow and give the Pan-African Parliament more powers. And the president saying that it's time all the countries signed that protocol, Malabo Protocol, that gives the Pan-African Parliament more powers.
All right, Sophie, I suppose therein you're starting to see the contours of the kind of debate South Africa wants, a holistic debate about the push and pull factors that drive migration. But we have to leave it there for this evening. Thank you for your time. SABC News specialist correspondent Sophie Mokoena there.